Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, September 9th, 2020. We are just a few days away, or excuse me, a few days removed from the NHRA US Nationals at Lucas Oil Raceway in Indianapolis, Indiana. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I got a slew of questions here. I really appreciate everybody sending these in. We had a wild weekend in Indiana, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to share this across our social platforms here real quick. Bear with me. What's up, Pat? Hello from Puerto Rico. What's going on, man? I hope you guys are doing well. Let's see here. Share. Of course, remember anything you guys want to talk about, Craig, Brandon, what's going on, guys? Anything you want to talk about, just throw it into the comments. We've got a slew of questions that have been submitted over the course from last week's show, but we want to, yeah, I'm happy to talk about whatever you guys want. I feel strongly that, I've said this a lot, but I stand by it, that drag racing really needs, one thing that we lack as a sport is conversation between the events. It's like, in the days leading up, I think everybody kind of gets excited. All this PR is happening. Press releases are being sent out. Stories are being posted. There's rumors or whatever. And then, during the race, of course, we're all excited and wound up like physic woodpeckers running around and everybody's, on the tire. Then the shoots come out Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, and it seems like it's crickets until the next go round. And one of the things that I think is super important, what's going on, Ryan, I think it's important to keep that conversation going. We fail to realize sometimes that that's what ESPN does so well with Sports Center and all these different talking head shows. Those shows play such a critical role in growing sports and keeping people engaged, keeping people talking. And that's just something drag racing has, in my opinion, lacked in a lot of ways over the years. So it's really important that we dive in to these things. We keep the conversation going. If somebody's got to do the work of being drag racing's water cooler, we here at Drag Illustrated are happy to do it. And I appreciate you guys so much for joining us almost every weekend or every Wednesday. So yeah, it's exciting, man. I'm glad to be back in the saddle. It was a long weekend in Indiana, as awesome as it was. And while it was somewhat shortened, I guess, from what we're used to, it's that's one of those events that just, it takes everything you've got. You're on your feet all day running around. And then I think something that I always forget is that the adrenaline dump, right? Because it never fails. Monday, Tuesday after a race, like all of a sudden you just find yourself in this fog because you're so high during the weekend and in the midst of all this stuff that it's you crash. There's no way to stay that excited that long. I mean, actually, it's not that hard for me. I stay pretty wound up pretty much all the time. But yeah, man. So I think I've heard from others that this year's big go was actually a big no. I wonder if that's the consensus. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into like 10,500 RPM of being completely spun out about so many different things that it's not even funny. Firstly, I was super bummed, and I guess I'll just speak frankly. I was super bummed to see the letter to the race teams from Josh Peterson, the NHRA VP, sent out on Tuesday. Yesterday, I think that whether that was going to happen or not, I just hated the optics. That's kind of a buzzword here in 2020. The people like to discuss the optics of certain situations. And I got to tell you guys that I couldn't be more disappointed, more upset, more pissed, etc. about not not about the news necessarily, just sharing it in that fashion. To be honest with you guys, what I'm asking myself right now is where's the rejoicing? Because I want to congratulate everybody that's involved in the sport of drag racing right now, because you are some resilient, determined, innovative. This group of people is so incredible. Why isn't anyone talking about the fact there were 891 race cars in Indiana? 891 race cars. That's 891 toter homes, dualies, motorhomes, 891 trailers, 891 generators, 891 toolboxes full of tools, 890 jacks and everything else, right? Engines, transmissions, torque converters, clutches. 1,600, 1,700 sets of, slicks. That deal to me was so incredibly impressive, and I can't say enough about it. Blows my mind, to be honest, because despite all the things that happen, and those of us that are in the know and that really pay attention to the sport of drag racing, all these things that are happening in the world and in our sport, and all these conversations that are happening behind closed doors, I want to tell you guys that you guys hit a home run in Indianapolis. I couldn't agree. I couldn't disagree more. This was the big go. The NHRA US Nationals is special, man. In the face of a global pandemic, 891 racers paid entry fees, towed to Indiana, and did battle on a legendary strip of asphalt and concrete outside of Indianapolis, Indiana, man. And I just couldn't be more proud of how that looked, in my opinion. That whenever, and I'll talk about this whole situation with Eric Trump and all the cool stuff that happened with that, but whenever we were asked to help the Trump campaign put together a highlight video of the NHRA US Nationals that they could use on their social media platforms, the thing that I felt strongly about, and the input that I had on the video, was simply that we need to make sure this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and we need to make sure that drag racing looks big. I think something that I experience, and probably all of you out there in the world have experienced, is that sometimes we're made to feel small. Drag racing, right? We're made to feel like we're not in the conversation, right? And I think to a certain extent, that's become something of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's something that we've accepted, and we've maybe even started to push ourselves, right? That we're outside of that. We're not NASCAR, we're not IndyCar, whatever. We're not F1, we're not monster truck racer or rally racing or whatever. We exist outside of that. We have to stop that. This thing that happened this past weekend, the scale of the US Nationals is breathtaking to me. It's breathtaking. Saturday afternoon, I marched my butt up to the top of the tower, and it's a long way up there at Lucas Oil Raceway. It's like 5 flights of stairs. I'm winded talking about it. It's like 5 flights of stairs up to the top of the tower at Lucas Oil Raceway. And I walked up to the railing and I looked out, and I was so proud. I was so proud of the sport of drag racing. I could hardly contain myself. It gives me chills right now. My hair is standing up on end. I was so proud of our sport, because few people understand how hard this stuff is to do, how many L's you take in drag racing. You're taking L's from the time you pull out of the driveway till the time you return back. It costs so much money, so much time, so much energy, right? And in the prize, the reward is perhaps never been lesser than it is here today. But we continue to go. And we go and we support these events in fine fashion. And I just hope all of you feel a certain sense of pride that with all the world is burning, friends, and we had people piled into Lucas Oil Raceway. Piled. It was unbelievable. I look around and I just, the scale of our event, our event, I don't know why I'm saying ours, but the NHRA's event, the scale of that event was so impressive, so impressive. And I just, to be honest, I'm bent out of shape today, because my belief is that you have to be proud of these successes. The NHRA missed the boat. Where's the press release celebrating 891 cars? Where's the press release announcing that? Where's the letter being sent out to the racers thanking them and congratulating them on what was a hell of a weekend, right? That event happened the weekend when it was supposed to happen. There were so many things, in my opinion, that went right. And somehow the decision is made to celebrate it by sending out in writing a massive purse reduction. We mustn't make these types of optical missteps. This serves what I was talking about. These are the things that serve to make drag racing look small and be small. Don't even put that stuff in writing. If you're gonna cut the purse like that, call and tell everybody. Break the news personally and have a gentleman's agreement with your people not to talk about the purse. We would be better off right now as a sport to not tell anybody what we're racing for. Just keep it quiet. I don't understand it. So was that email sent out just to save making a bunch of phone calls? I don't understand it for the life of me. I don't understand these decisions. And I'm telling you, someone said this, where is it? Derek Carmichael. To me, the vibe was electric. Absolutely. Where's the press release talking about the electric atmosphere at the US Nationals that perhaps only that event can get? What are we doing? I don't understand it. I don't normally get this upset about stuff, but I'm just making I'm crying for help. Drag so many things that we should be proud of. The participation, no other sport, no other motorsport can put 900 cars on the property. You know, that the participation is breathtaking. How we're not shouting from the rooftops about this right now is absolutely beyond me. I don't understand it. I'm so frustrated by it. And I don't mean to make a big ass out of myself or anything like that, but I am the first one to applaud all their successes. And I still, to this day, what NHRA has done over the course of time has not been duplicated, in my opinion. They have created an atmosphere there, a sense of competition, a sense of accomplishment that you can't get anywhere else. You ask Erica Enders, you ask Jack Beckman, him and J.R. Todd are pushing each other, or J.R. Todd's pushing Jack Beckman at the top end, because that's how much it means to win Indy. And that they're not proud enough of that. The NHRA is not proud enough of the fact that they have created the ultimate accomplishment, the ultimate battlefield for all drag racers. And I don't mean to speak disparagingly about any other. I'm a promoter myself. I put on my own races, but there are events all over the country, right? There are all these different events and all these different series or whatever. Everybody that races there, again, don't take this the wrong way, wishes they were racing NHRA or aspires to be there, right? And it may be outside the scope of reality or outside their financial situation, but you can pretty much ask any drag racer if they won $1 billion, because $1 million wouldn't do it, where would you go race? You're going to go run Top Fuel, Funny Car, Pro Stock, you're going to go race there. It's the big show. And the NHRA deserves infinite credit for having created that over the course of 60 plus years. It's incredible. But the optics, and these are situations we're allowing to happen. I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't. There are so many things to celebrate, but we choose to only shine a light on the bad stuff, right? I mean, they can't get a press release out quick enough when they're canceling a race. They can't get a graphic thrown up on Facebook quick enough with the gigantic canceled text across it. I don't understand. And this is just, we have to lean into the things that we're doing well as a sport, the participation that we're creating, the family atmosphere that we have, all these things, the men, women, the diversity that's on display. And I'm not just saying like racially or whatever. I'm talking about drag racing is so diverse. We have on the grounds at the US Nationals this past weekend, we had the elite wealthy, people who have enough money never to have to worry about anything ever again, all the way down to a guy who probably scalped tickets in the parking lot to get in that place. And guess what they're doing? They're all in there functioning as one community. It's incredible. White, brown, yellow, Christians and everything else. I'm going to say there's a large majority of Christians, but it is people from all walks of life coming together, standing when the national anthem comes on, staring at the flag, crossing their hearts, taking their hats off, right? Of every shape, size, socioeconomic background, all of these things, men and women, young and old, right? I mean, what other pro sport can Erica Enders go out on the track and crush Matt Hartford, right? I mean, because I don't know if she could do it in a fist fight. I don't know if she could do it in basketball. I don't know if she could do it in football, right? But out on the drag strip, it's the ultimate equalizer, right? And we're not proud enough of these things. We're not nearly excited enough. Drag racing in my opinion, drag racing put a phenomenal foot forward this weekend at the US Nationals. One that should sell sponsorships, one that should excite manufacturers in our industry, be at the resiliency of the racing masses, the drag racing masses. This is an incredibly special group of people. And I hope I wish we were as proud of it as we should be. I wish we were, because it's the event was so good. The NHRA US Nationals, in my opinion, it was fantastic to have an event like that, to have that kind of participation with everything that's going on in the world, guys. It was an absolute home run. And I don't know, the whole thing was fantastic in my opinion. And of course, I'm happy to talk about anything you guys want to talk about. We'll break down the race. My experience, man, I'll tell you, the race was fantastic. I don't know how many of you have watched this show and for how long, but my dad owns an auto repair shop, right? I grew up at the racetrack. I spent every weekend of my life. I have people tell me like, oh man, I remember the first time my dad took me to the drag strip in 10th grade. I was at the drag strip a few days before I was born, in my mother's belly, in my dad's Hallmark enclosed car trailer, right? I've spent my entire life at the drag strip. There's no thing other than my family that means more to me than the sport of drag racing, right? And I can't tell you guys how humbling and surreal it is for me personally. The first time I went to the US Nationals after we started Drag Illustrated magazine was about 15 years ago. I remember paying to park, buying a ticket, sneaking around in the staging lanes because I didn't have a credential, right? I didn't have media access. I certainly didn't have restricted area access. I had to watch most of the racing from the grandstands. And I can't tell you guys how surreal it is now, 15 years later, to be standing on, be involved in the sport at all and making a living. But I found myself Saturday afternoon on the tower, Lucas Oil Raceway at Indianapolis, standing on the tower, talking to Glenn Cromwell, the NHRA president. And to me, it's just incredible to have had. It's an incredible thing, man. And I appreciate every single one of you that have supported us at Drag Illustrated, whether it's reading stories on our website, subscribing to the magazine. Maybe you're a company that's advertised in the magazine or partnering with us and stuff. And I just hope you guys know how much we appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. For someone who truly loves the sport of drag racing to death, to be doing this, for having been able to do it for all these years, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And I want you guys to know that everything I just said about the things that have transpired in the last 24 hours or whatever, it comes from the best possible place, because I love this sport. I love drag racing, and I want to see this thing. I know we deserve more, right? I know the sport deserves more. Racers deserve more. You cannot tell me that drag racing is not the great American motorsport, right? I mean, this is it. There's never been a sport that plays to the ever shortening attention span of our culture more so than drag racing, right? It's over quick. It's all life and death. It's all sudden death, right? We have to wait till a football game goes into overtime to get those dire consequences, right? Where it's all on the line and every play matters. Well, that happens in every round, every run of drag racing, right? Every round is sudden death. No pit stops, no second chances. Drag racing is without question the great American motorsport, and it's going to take a conscious decision by all of us that that's the case, that we deserve more, that we deserve to be on SportsCenter, we deserve to be on these Fox Sports shows, and we have to make that decision and work towards that goal. But trumpeting to the world that we're going to race for $1,500 this weekend with the quickest and fastest cars on the planet Earth does not serve that goal. I don't know in what universe that it does. And it breaks my heart, because I know from personal experience, having put on these events, worked with sponsors, worked with media outlets, it doesn't have to be this way. It really doesn't. But there has to be more communication. There has to be more of a team effort right now. And I've said this several times. I don't believe the divide has ever been more significant than it is right now between professional teams and drag racing and the NHRA. That there must be a way. There has to be an effort made to joining these two sides, bringing them together, right? And making them work together and creating an environment where they want to. And that's part of the problem, is that the NHRA has done, having done the things that they've done, they've burnt bridges, right? And they've created further separation, further divide. And we need to be working to repair those relations and repair those, build those bridges back up, because we need each other. Racers need the NHRA. NHRA needs the racers. It's a mutually beneficial thing. But until we all get on the same page and start swimming the same direction, and I'm telling you, one fish going the wrong way will spin the deal out. I mean, it only takes one. So trying to get everybody working together, swimming in the same direction, I can't begin to tell you guys what could come of this and how big it could be for the sport of drag racing. There's the participation we have, the resources and the people that are involved in this sport. These are big time players, right? And we need to lean on them, right? Reach out to them. There's no reason, in my opinion, that NHRA should be in any sort of financial trouble. I don't care about their business model at all. There's enough people, there's enough stakeholders that an effort should be made to have fixed this situation, to create, to try to stop the bleeding or whatever the case may be. And you've got a group of people that'll do anything. But you can't just expect them to do anything, right? Maybe ask them, maybe encourage them, maybe prod them along a little bit, keep them involved. I don't understand some of the things that happen here. But I don't want to get away from the fact that this, I personally feel, I didn't see a ledger, I didn't see a balance sheet or anything like that, but I truly believe that this was a great weekend from all, in my opinion, from everybody that I talked to, racers involved. They looked at this as a really fantastic weekend for the sport of drag racing. In my opinion, no matter how you line up politically, the fact that our sport was thrown in front of an audience of nearly 86 million people on the President of the United States personal Twitter account, I don't know that we can discount that. That is such a huge moment for the sport of drag racing. Yet another thing that we should be trumpeting right now. Yet another thing that we should be talking about and shouting from the rooftops, that we had a major celebrity on the grounds of the U.S. Nationals. And I understand I completely understand the debate about keeping politics out of drag racing. I understand, but it feels to me like in a lot of ways that ship has sailed, right? That ship has sailed. The politics are in everything almost at this point in time. And the fact of the matter is, I think you can respectfully honor the office of the President of the United States, the first family, without feeling like you're campaigning, right? I mean, there's a way to do that. And I can't say enough about what happened this past weekend. And I think it was a phenomenal thing. The fact that you had Eric Trump and his whole crew out there taking in, people aren't giving this guy credit. I mean, I've known several very famous people or whatever that have come to the drag races, and they're there for a half hour, right? They're there for opening ceremonies and they check out. They're at home, or they're on the starting line for 20, 30 minutes and they're headed home, right? Trump and his crew were at the racetrack for like 13 hours. It was unreal, man. It was absolutely incredible to see that happen. And I think about the whole thing, and then the fact that we got asked to do this video for the campaign, which was really cool. I was super proud of. And then to see, at Real Donald Trump retweet our video that we did for him was incredible. But what I was more excited about was that tweet on Monday when the President of the United States shouted out Erica Enders. What an incredible thing. What an incredible happening for the sport of drag racing, man. That was just, right? I mean, it's crazy. I don't care how you feel about anything. The fact that the most powerful man in the land shouted out Erica Enders for her U.S. Nationals win, I just think it was a fantastic thing. And as a whole, just a great way to kind of bookend the weekend. I'm actually seeing some questions pop up in here. I saw one from Gary.
Are you going to XRP this weekend?
I don't think I'm going to go to XRP this weekend. I actually didn't know I didn't know about it, but I might go. I sure like going to Extreme Raceway Park. Let me see. David Gates, what's up, buddy? Gary, what is this? Gary Brown, Gary Smith. Wes, I have been in a heavy debate on my page with Mike English and Brett Kepner as I write this. I share the exact same position as you, being a former racer myself. Addressing this issue has been long overdue. Well, the payout issue, I saw Kepner's argument on there, and Kepner's argument historically has just been that this is what drag racers do, right? They pay to play, and they have willingly done it for eons, and they will continue to do it. And this is the thing that I think is incredible about what the NHRA has accomplished, and this is, they don't get credit for this, is that no matter what the purse is, they're going to have pits packed full of racers in Gainesville, right? That everybody will be there. And I think the problem, in some regards, is that they know that. They know that. And I do think that, you can call any of these pro level team owners. I talked to a slew of them just today. I mean, I talked to Mike Ashley for a little bit today. Who else did I talk? Richard Freeman, Bo Butner. Who else did I talk to? I talked to a handful of folks today specifically about payout stuff. And it's like, very few of these teams are out there racing for the purse. It's great to offset expenses or anything like that. But if you look at the top of each of those classes, it's not necessarily people that are out here needing that prize money to get to the next one. However, the proposition is just becoming increasingly screwed up, I think, is what this pushback is more about. Again, the optics of it, right? It's the optics of how bad it looks. I mean, especially for the teams that are paying entry fees and then have to race for $1,500 or, I mean, we paid at the World Door Slammer Nationals presented by C-Tech Manufacturing. We literally paid $7,500 to qualify for pro stock. To qualify, that's more than they're going to get to win from here on out. And I think the thing that is problematic is that, and I actually talked to Cruz Pedregon about this at the races, and he was talking about the fact that a lot of business owners made decisions and made cuts and made changes, financially speaking, that they needed to make before COVID happened, right? And I know that I personally had that. I had some things in my businesses that were just a little sloppy, right? Or hadn't really been thoroughly thought out. Where maybe we were spending a bunch of money on something or spending a bunch of money here or spending a bunch of money there, and it just didn't make sense. And what I'm seeing is businesses across the board find ways to cut costs. And a lot of those decisions were decisions they should have made before COVID, but COVID just drove the bus on it, right? COVID pressed the issue. And I think the problem that no one's really talking about is that when's the purse going to turn back? Right? How long is this going to last? My suspicion would be that this may be the purse moving forward. Because as well as I do, when things go down, it takes forever for them to go back up. It takes forever. And I think that COVID and this whole situation has, provided the NHRA with this perfect opportunity and perfect excuse to dramatically reduce their purse and blame it on COVID. Right? And now, granted, whether they need to do it or not, that is not up for debate, right? But I think that it's the thing that I'm suspicious of or curious about is, when will the purse return to normal? Is there any sort of plan for that? Is there any sort of strategic outline as for when the purses are going to return to normal? I'd love to know that, because my fear is that this is just the model moving forward, right? And that it's an interesting thing, man. 50 grand would pay for my racing program for 2 years, but me being a racer, I use it to upgrade the car and make it more expensive to race. You absolutely would, Pat. And that's drag racing. And that's the thing I think that inspires me about our sport. The opportunity that exists here is that racers are going to race. They're going to find a way. They're going to do anything. And by and large, they're going to find a way to go NHRA drag racing. And it's not something that I think the NHRA is nearly proud enough of. And maybe they kind of rub it in our face. Maybe they're more proud of it than I want to admit. But it's really, for me, that's the problematic part, is that not knowing what the plan is for getting that purse back to normal, back where it needs to be. And again, the optics of people like Matt Hagan, people like Jack Beckman, people like J.R. Todd, that I believe are superstars, right? Superstars waiting in the wings. They're stars in drag racing, but there's so much more for those people. Ron Capps, Leah Pritchett. I mean, the list goes on. And I hate the optics of them racing for a few $1,000s. I hate it. I don't. I actually had a conversation with this is an interesting thing, and this is something you have to think about, is I met with what I would call a sponsorship broker over the weekend, had a really, really cool conversation with a guy, and we were talking about bringing major big box companies to the sport of drag racing, right? Outside of our, auto parts and hardcore racing manufacturing companies. And we talked about how you can't go to one of these companies and try to get 20 grand, right? Because what are you going to do for them that's significant or going to move the needle at all for $20,000? They're not stupid, right? You have to have a number and a plan that is big enough to get their attention and let them know you're for real, right? And so how problematic is it for a Leah Pritchett or a J.R. Todd chasing a sponsor or whatever? They get asked the question, man, this stuff's really expensive. I can't get over how crazy all this is, and the technology and the trucks and the trailers and all the people it takes to do it and all the infrastructure, the engine shops, the dynos, the flow benches, all the infrastructure it takes to race at a high level. Man, you guys got to be racing for millions of dollars or something, right? Well, actually, we're racing for $5,000, right? 15 grand. It's the optics of it are not good. And one of the things, and this is not something that is necessarily a new thought, but to get ourselves in the conversation of mainstream big time sports, the numbers have to go up, right? The purse money has to go up. Whether it offsets the cost or anything like that is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, to get in the conversation, the purse needs to be going that way, not this way. And I don't know about you guys, but there are several businesses throughout the land have been forced to beg, borrow, and steal to maintain their integrity, to keep doing what they said they were going to do. And that's what I look at the NHRA, and it's like, man, maybe you have to borrow money. Maybe you have to seek investment. Maybe you have to, I don't know. I don't know what they would have had to, but this is definitely where we go from here is massively problematic, in my opinion. Where do we go from here? What are we going to do now, right? Because we're just getting further and further and further, in my opinion, away from where the sport needs to be in order for guys to make a living doing it. Guys and gals make a living going drag racing, being professional drag racers. It's it's an interesting thing, man. It really is. Once COVID is gone, attendance levels will return to normal. I honestly was massively impressed with the attendance at the race this past weekend. I couldn't get over how many families were there. You'd plainly see mom, dad, a couple of kids. It was really cool to see all the people that braved, I guess, what the conditions of life today, and came out and hung out with this deal, hung out and were a part of this. I was super impressed, really. And I thought everybody did a phenomenal job. I was impressed by the team's commitment to the masks. Drag racers, in my opinion, kind of rule breakers by nature, it seems like. And I was, just impressed that everybody's playing along, everybody's doing their part. Optics, remember? All these racers and all these crew members, they know that it's important that when they're seen in front of a camera or seen on camera, whatever, on TV, or seen in a group, that they're doing their part. They understand the optics, right? That it's important that they participate in that. And I was really proud of it. I thought the stands, obviously I wasn't out there with a tape measure or whatever, but you could definitely tell that fans were being responsible. They spread out and keep distance in between them. And what's even more incredible is that it was pretty cool that NHRA was executing this with a skeleton crew, with a fraction of the staff they typically have. They were learning that, hey, we can do this at a high level with a whole lot less people, which is also another thing that's, in one aspect, pretty scary. What is bad is that NHRA is a nonprofit organization. Where's the money going? I think there's some misinformation about that, to be honest. I mean, NHRA is most definitely a nonprofit organization, but they do have another business that's for profit. There's another arm of that business that's for profit. I don't know, man. I look around and I'm trying to figure it out, because I know that you think about how many people paid entry fees this weekend, the purse money that's going out, the sponsor money that was in play, the ticket sales that actually happened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's hard not to believe that there's some mistakes being made somewhere financially, right? There's a meme I saw circulating today highlighting a bunch of the NHRA executive team salary. I don't know how accurate any of that information is, but comparing those two spreadsheets to one another, the NHRA payout moving forward and the executive team's pay scale, it actually says purse money or prize money, which I thought was pretty hilarious. But yeah, it makes you, it has you raising your eyebrows a little bit. I do know, I have it on good authority that the NHRA executive team took a massive haircut, but it's just not enough, to be honest. It's absolutely not enough. I look at what the executives make at like Salvation Army or any other major, Salvation Army, I think, is the biggest nonprofit on the planet Earth. They do like 3.8 billion a year in revenue. And I can tell you that their CEO makes less than the CEO of the NHRA. And that seems problematic to me. But I'm just being honest. Someone asked, so I had to ask. So I had to answer it, right? That's the rule. Hodges Mercer, I wish politics weren't in NHRA in any form at all. If I see a political banner that I'm pulling against them, I live in South Louisiana. Yeah, I tell you what, I completely respect that. I actually talked here in front of everybody, and I said that I respect, there's a certain amount of hypocrisy, I think, that does happen. All of us, so many people have cried that they don't want to see politics in the NBA. They don't want to see politics in the NFL, that this is an escape for them. Yet whenever the NHRA kind of pushed to get politics out of the sport of drag racing, everybody was grabbing pitchforks and up in arms and ready to, march on Glendora. So it is problematic in a lot of ways. But here's the thing is that, like, and I'll tell you this right now, the big difference, man, is that, like, I think the drag racing community by and large, like it's just an accepting, like, I get it. I totally respect your opinion. I don't want to fight with you about it. I get it. You don't like politics and drag racing. I don't necessarily care. We can be different. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing that's the thing that I think exists at the drag strip that is so exciting, is that I honestly think someone could show up at a car. I guarantee you, mark my words, that a Biden-Harris funny car could have showed up at the U.S. Nationals, and it wouldn't have gotten egged. It wouldn't have. It would not have. I guaranteed it would not. No one's going to freak out. I mean, we all know that everybody's different. And that's the thing that I think we're sleeping on, is just the incredible community we have here at the drag races. And it's a year of politics, right? This is probably the most this is an insane year. I think we're probably crazy to think that it's not going to happen. I totally understand the notion of not wanting politics in drag racing. Like I said, it's not something that just weighs heavily on my heart, to be honest. So it's not something I've got like a super strong opinion about. My opinion is more that I guarantee you that if somebody wanted to roll out there with a Biden car or whatever, they'd get thumbs up or whatever, and completely whatever. To each their own. Drag racing is full of people that, there's plenty of monkey see, monkey do, but there's a whole lot of forge your own path, go your own way. Look no further than like the comp eliminator pits, right? And you see a whole lot of people that are going it their own way, completely dedicated to being unique. And it's, yeah, man, to each their own, right? I think, yeah, divisive is the word that I'm looking for, Tom. And I have said that. I hate anything that is divisive, and I'm not typically one to be super divisive or whatever, but I will tell you guys that, I think that there's a large majority of the drag racing audience that leans right, that's conservative, that are small business owners, that are staunch Republicans. And if that's your constituency, if that's the majority of your audience, and I don't think it would be very hard to find that out, right? Some simple polling or whatever. You don't have to poll 6 million people. You poll 500 and you're pretty well safe with the results of that. So I think they could have found out earlier on how their fans, how their racers lean politically or whatever. And maybe there was an opportunity to embrace it, right? The fact that President Trump's son, Eric, was on the property. I think that there could have been, I think something positive could have been made of that, no matter what. Like, no matter where you lean, politically, and I've said that a lot today, but no matter how you feel, the fact that the president's son and a freaking bulletproof SUV and the Secret Service were at the drag strip, that feels like a win. It's what I've said about like the street outlaws. I heard all the talk about the street outlaws portraying, romantically portraying street racing and shining a light on illegal street racing and all the bad part of that. But for me, I looked at it through the lens of drag racing being on network TV is a win. I don't care what kind of drag racing it is. If I can turn on the Discovery Channel at 7, 8 o'clock on a Monday night and see in a car doing a burnout, I don't care if it's on the moon. It's a victory for the sport of drag racing. It's a victory for car culture, right? And to have a world-renowned, a worldwide celebrity, right, show up at the drag races, for me, was an opportunity to toot our horn. Right? To be proud that we have someone like this that would spend an entire day at the drag races. That's how intoxicating that experience was for the Trump. They almost came back on Sunday. I thought they were going to come back on Sunday. And I think that's pretty spectacular that the drag racing, it can make for a long day, right? Anybody who's done it much knows that, man, these are some long days. Trump and company were at the racetrack for like 13 hours. They were there. I felt bad at the end of the day when he was leaving. His shirt, he had like a nice button-down shirt on, ruined, right? Junk, covered in rubber. And I'm like, man, this dude fought the good fight. He wasn't up in a suite, right? He was sitting in a lawn chair in the pits watching a Liberty transmission be rebuilt. I mean, he was warming up a pro stock car. He was into it, man. And I was just super proud of it, to be honest. And I don't think as a sport, we were proud enough of those moments. And when you're in the media business and when you're in, I would argue, and I tell this to people that are in business, any like time I do work with anybody on business stuff, it's that you're in show business. And what does I say all the time, Dion? Perception is reality, right? Like, for me, I feel like the NHRA right now should be going full tilt boogie on promoting the fact that they had a celebrity on the property, that Eric Trump was there. They need to be trumpeting the fact that they had 891 racers entered. They need to talk about the fan turnout and the support in the face of a global pandemic, that they hit all these, they got bat on ball in so many different ways this past weekend. And there are so many things to celebrate. And when you're in business, I know it's uncomfortable for this group of people because we're all hardworking, regular people, right? This is a group of human beings that are second to none. Drag racing is such an incredible community, right? But we are humble to a fault. And it's something that's held us back for a long time because we're not willing. We're so humble and we're so bashful and we don't want to be abrasive and we don't want to, rub someone the wrong way, right? We won't say anything, right? And there's a quote, I say it all the time, you guys are going to laugh, but I mean, if you don't toot your own horn, you can't complain when there's no music. And I know it's uncomfortable and I know it's not one of those things that everybody is exceptionally good at, but we've got to be proud of the successes that we're having. We've got to be proud of it. We've got to be telling the world those are the type of things. The show business aspect right now is when you've got a media team that goes full tilt boogie into sending out press releases, organizing interviews. Like, why isn't Sean Langdon on a talk show? Why isn't Jack Beckman on a talk show? Why are they not being taken on a media tour? Why are they not being interviewed all day, every day, right? I mean, Erica Enders, Jack Beckman, the people who won the U.S. Nationals, Sean Langdon this weekend, they should be paraded around, right? They should be doing radio shows. They should be doing, even if it's local AM, everything you can do to tell this story and to celebrate this whole thing, this massive tradition that is the NHRA U.S. Nationals. I think they did a phenomenal job, put on a hell of a race. But here in the days after, in my opinion, when it perhaps matters most, there's a deafening silence. And the only news that we're getting is bad news, right? And I hate it. I hate it for all of us because this is something that we need to be celebrating. These are things that we need to be talking about. and loud and proud of, right? It's just, there's so many awesome things that happened this past weekend. I did see someone mention Megan Meyer. What an incredible way to go out. I actually intend to have her on as a guest to the podcast relatively soon. We texted about it this morning because I think there's not very many instances in drag racing where you go out on top. Most guys race until they can barely crawl out of the car. So it's kind of cool to see someone like Megan Meyer kick ass and take names, set records, 509 in an A-Fuel dragster at like 280. It's incredible. And to see her go out on top, it's kind of a cool story, in my opinion. To go out as a champion, to go out as a race winner, a record holder, it's a really incredible story. And that's another person who's done a phenomenal job of telling their story and attracting sponsors because she's put herself out there. She's talked about her successes, talked about her failures, right? Talked about missteps. It's been really cool to see Megan Meyer's ascension. And as much as I hate to see her get out of the seat, because I do think she could have been a star Top Fuel funny car driver, I really do. It would have been incredible to see her continue that trajectory into Top Fuel, the highest level of drag racing, and see how she could do there. I think that would have been a really, really awesome thing to do, to see happen. But I totally respect her decision to get out of the seat. Totally respect it. I'm going to share this on my personal page real quick. I forgot to share it. Let's go to some of these other questions. Okay, let me see. Okay, 900 cars, great fan turnout. Yeah, the question I got here was, considering the car count, the fan turnout, considering everything that's going on in the world today, the first family in attendance, did you feel like the U.S. Nationals lived up to being a major event? Well, absolutely. I've talked a lot about that here today, but I completely feel like the NHRA U.S. Nationals lived up to its namesake. It's the big go. One of the questions I got was, did the race feel any different ending on Sunday versus Monday? Personally, I think that was a home run. Not that I was excited to go home on Sunday night, and it was nice to have the holiday, but I think that tightening that event up a little bit, especially in this day and age, and considering the expense and the time away from work, tightening things up a little bit, I think was actually a big success. I think they ran the race really well. I liked the emphasis on Friday night qualifying. I thought that was pretty cool, to be honest. I think that the way there was only that one shot on Friday night, it made it seem more significant, right? That Friday night qualifying was this standalone happening, kind of how the PDRA has their Friday night under the lights, Friday night of fire. It's kind of like a show within a show. That's what it felt like at the NHRA national event. And it gave everybody an opportunity to get home and enjoy their time. Let me see the next question here. Gainesville in the fall is unique in a big race. How does the NHRA stay in the limelight for that, especially since there's no more Fox broadcasts with NFL starting? Wow, what a question. This is a great question. You stay in this limelight by doing exactly what I just said, talking about this deal all the time. We need to be talking about what's going on in drag racing day in and day out. Every freaking weekend, or excuse me, every day, there needs to be. And I guess I'll just steal I'll just share the strategy here. Like when I put on a race, I put together a massive content marketing strategy that oftentimes extends beyond 90 days, right? I roll into our race in Denver or our race in Orlando, and I've got a 90-day plan of content that we're going to put out a press release announcing a sponsor every 3 days. We're going to put out a racer talking about the race every other day. We're going to talk to the track owner twice, right? We're going to interview twice. We're going to interview the main race director twice. I'm going to do 5 Q&As. You've got to be constantly telling your story in the headlines, in the media, in the news, and it's so much more impactful because when it's done as a story, when you send out a press release, or when you send out a press release that's well done, or a feature article that's well done, what you're doing is you're controlling the narrative, which is super important in the promotional world, right? B, you're leaning on third-party validation, right? Because like one of the things that I see promoters do constantly are the countdown graphics. Well, you don't have to look very far to see that those things perform horribly on social media, right? They don't perform. The engagements, I see it all the time. 87 days till whatever, and there's 3 likes and like -6 shares, right? I mean, because that's not engaging content. But if it was an interview with the guy who won the race last year, right, or a story about the guy who's won the race 3 times, you have to lean into content marketing. Get people to read that stuff. Get them to, and it sells your event for you, right? It does a lot of the hard work for you. Then people want to be featured in those stories. They notice it. They notice there's something special happening. There's some sort of strategic effort happening, and they want to be included. And I think that that's something that right now, the way we stay in the limelight, the way we stay relevant, the sport of drag racing, is to just never shut up. Run our mouths constantly. And when I look at the sports that are really killing it, I see people that do exactly that. Like mixed martial arts, the UFC, their rise to prominence has been unlike probably any other thing in the history of sports, going from 0 to 100 real freaking quick, right? And it's just like the thing that they do consistently is talk about themselves and talk about how great their sport is and talk about how many different people are involved and the worldwide reach. I mean, in a lot of ways, I liken fighting to drag racing, because one of the things that UFC president Dana White talks about all the time is that everybody understands a fight. They get it. These two people are going to fight, right? It's not hard to explain. One of them is going to win. The other is going to lose. There are several ways to lose. There are several ways to win. But these two people are going to walk in here and they're going to fight one another. Whether you're from Brazil or China or Antarctica or young or old or female or male, you understand the dynamics. Drag racing is the exact same. These two cars are going to line up and they're going to race, and somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, and it's going to be awesome. And we just don't talk about this stuff consistently enough. We just don't. And we're trying. God knows my team at Drag Illustrated, my guys and gals, working around the clock to spread the good news, spread the gospel of drag racing. But it's, again, it takes a group effort. And I've said this to promoters, large and small, that fire starts at the top. It's different. It's like you take a campfire and turn it upside down, okay? Because it starts at the top and trickles down. And you can always, there's an old adage that says you can tell how good an insurance salesman is by how much coverage he has on himself, right? Because if he's got $10 million in life insurance, you know that he believes in it, right? And what I see a lot of times when I look around the drag racing landscape and specifically at the NHRA, they're not excited at the top, right? And that's where the trickle down starts. If I'm not excited about Drag Illustrated, no one that works here is going to be excited about it. If I'm not excited about the events that we're putting on, no one else is going to be excited about it. No matter how much I tell them they should be and how much maybe they know they should be, right? It starts at the top. And I just truly believe that that's something that's lacking. And if your event is lacking sizzle right now, if your series is struggling, you're the tip of the sword, right? You're at the top. If you aren't excited, if you aren't wound up, if you aren't screaming and yelling, then you cannot expect anybody else to be. And the problem is you can't hire someone to do it. You can't hire someone else to be that guy. There's this book Simon Sinek wrote called Start With Why. And it talks about, provides several examples throughout history, right? Throughout history where being in it for the right reasons made all the difference, right? Like there are companies, profit and all that should be a result, right? That's expected. But like Apple, as an example, a couple of things I'll tell you that I think are very interesting that are identified in this book, but it applies to all of us that are in the drag racing world or in business. You have to start with why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it, right? And it's so important. Like Apple, for instance, Apple didn't set out to make computers, right? They set out to change the way human beings interacted with technology, right? They set out to change the world, and people bought in, right? And the way they did that was through a personal computer, right? that was the tool, right? There's a story they say about the Wright brothers, right? The Wright brothers there were multiple people trying to be the first to achieve manned flight, right? There were a lot of people. It was like, imagine but pre 300 miles per hour, right? There were a lot of people trying to go 300 miles per hour in the quarter mile, right? There were a lot of people trying to achieve manned flight, right? There were people far better resourced, far more connected politically, far more powerful, far more influential than the Wright brothers trying to fly, right? But they were doing it for the wrong reasons. The Wright brothers were doing it for all the right reasons. Despite having less money, less funding, rudimentary tools, rudimentary equipment, they achieved flight because they were doing it for all the right reasons. They knew they were going to change the world by us figuring out how to fly, right? But these other people that were trying to do it, they were doing it for the end result. They were doing it for the fame. They were doing it for the money, right? That's a byproduct of it, right? That's going to happen if you achieve it. And the way to achieve, in my opinion, is to do things for all the right reasons, right? And I think that another thing that if you look back in time, all the successful movements, and there's no better example than Trump, right? Perhaps no better example than Trump. But if you look at all the great movements throughout time, whether it's affirmative action, whether it's Christianity, whether it's technology, and I'm going to kind of lump everybody, at the helm of all of those things were one charismatic leader. The Nazis had Hitler, right? The ultimate sales guy, right? Christianity, we had Jesus Christ, right? Affirmative action had Martin Luther King Jr., right? Technology had Steve Jobs. You know, they're at the helm of every single one of those happenings was a single charismatic leader, right? Someone who believed and someone who was uniquely qualified to share the gospel, right? To spread the good word of what we're trying to accomplish. And all of those people that I sparked crazy change, did huge things, some good, some bad. But by including that bad example, I'm speaking to the power, right? To the influence that can be achieved when you're doing things for the right reasons. Again, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's why it's so important to be authentic, to let people know who you are, right? And to tell your story and connect. Because I'm telling you, people like to do business with people they believe in or people they relate to and they understand why they do it. It's so very, very important. There have been tons of companies that have come out trying to do what Apple did. Well, hey man, they're making all this money making a computer. We should make a computer. And they're always a level below, right? Because they're just making a computer. They're making a computer because they see this other company making a computer and they see that it's a very profitable endeavor. So that's what they're going to do. Again, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think that is something that every one of us has to be reminded of. If we're in the promotion business, if we're in the race team business, whatever we're doing, the enthusiasm, the belief, it all starts at the top and trickles down, right? If you're kicking rocks and pissed off at the world or whatever, you can expect everybody that falls in below you to behave the exact same way. And any promoter or series official that expects some guy on the payroll, some gal on the payroll, some media people or whatever to be enough to counteract your disinterest, you couldn't be more wrong. You couldn't be more screwed up, matter of fact. And yeah, man. What else do we got? Next question. Such a cool weekend for Pro Mod with Chad Green getting his first win and Stevie dominating. What stood out to you? I tell you what, I think, again, the Pro Mod show really was phenomenal. I think Pro Mod and Pro Stock collectively stole the show this weekend. I think between Erica winning, it just cars running good, a field separated by 700s from top to bottom, right? Some fresh faces going rounds, the storylines that exist. Matt Hartford was part of an Elite Motorsports engine customer last year, Elite Performance engine customer. He joins forces with KB Racing, goes out against, in the final round against Erica Enders, which would be technically a rival at this point. I think that storyline could be promoted, that these are rivals, and Erica comes out victorious. She ends up redeeming herself and kind of achieving some level of redemption after losing in a heartbreaking fashion last year to Alex Laughlin, her teammate. The Pro Mod show, Stevie Jackson, obviously, I think is a huge, a phenomenal ambassador for the sport of drag racing. And I thought it was not at all surprising to see him have the success that he's having. I thought it was super cool to see Jason Scruggs and Chad Green. And I guess for me, as a bit of a Jason Scruggs fanboy, I couldn't help standing down there on the starting line, seeing Jason Scruggs and his dad Mitchell behind the car. And if I squinted a little bit, I could picture them in a little red Corvette at Kennedale Raceway in Texas doing the exact same thing. And to see their ascension, their rise from the nitty-gritty backwoods 8th mile drag strips all across the Southeast to the ADRL Pro Extreme World Champion, to the height, the top of PDRA Pro Extreme, and now to be moving into NHRA Pro Mod and having success, going to a final round. It was super cool to see Jason Scruggs out there in front of that crowd on that track. And I'm sure that that's something that I'm sure that has to hit him in some way, shape, or form. I'm sure it has to hit him that how incredible is it to have come all this way. I was super excited for Chad Green. I know Chad personally. He's a great guy, first and foremost. And he's a guy who's been through a ton out on the drag strip. He's spent a tremendous amount of money. He's had some rough rides. He's fought through all sorts of adversity, and he continues to fight the good fight. And to see him rewarded, it was very deserving. That guy deserves to be in the winner's circle, and I was so freaking happy for him to happen. Now, granted, he didn't win the U.S. Nationals, but it did happen at Indy, and he'll forever get to say that he won Pro Mod at Indy, no matter, he can leave out that it wasn't the U.S. Nationals. It was still Pro Mod at Indy, right? And I think that's a pretty awesome story. I was super happy for Dean Marinas, Dean Marinas and Pat Musey, crew chief, coach, crew chief, on Chad Green's car for the last several years, with Pat Musey spearheading Lizzie Musey's No Prep Street Outlaws program. Dean was running solo this weekend. It was really cool to see Dean put a car in the winner's circle. That's a great group of guys. And for the fact that it was a nitrous car, I mean, it was only a few years ago that, winning a Pro Mod race in the quarter mile with a nitrous car would have seemed like a pipe dream. So it's cool to see them out there doing what they did. Again, Pro Mod, the Pro Charger cars still are blowing my mind. I am truly impressed with the performance of those cars across the board. I definitely think they've got some figuring out to do, because I think the initial belief system was that we were going to have those Pro Charger cars come into the field and be a little bit behind and have some ground to make up. But the exact opposite has happened. We've got cars that have that would seem to have a clear performance advantage, man. And it's something I'm sure they'll be trying to sort out in the coming months. But again, it doesn't, I mean, just like we don't race on paper, right? Stevie Jackson definitely didn't have the fastest car on the property, but he is one hell of a racer. He did a great job behind the wheel, and they found a way to win. And that was, I thought Pro Mod was, I love Pro Mod racing though. So let me see what these other questions are. Sorry. Such a cool Erica's run. You got one for me? Dion, I hear you coughing.
No.
Hold on. Boom. I've got some more here. Oh. We've got 5 races left now, knock on wood. What championship race is the most appealing? I think for me, the most appealing one is really Erica Enders. I think that Erica has a shot at becoming a 4-time world champion that I think as a female race car driver would put her in extremely elite company. She'd be the winningest female race car driver of all time. I think that's an incredible incredible storyline right there. I do see Matt and Angie Smith, Scotty Polishek getting his first win in pro stock bike was absolute to see, and Selena getting to sing the national anthem, the whole bit, the Denso race. I just thought that was an incredible weekend. Matt wins the pro stock bike shootout, or the pro stock bike battle. I just thought the whole thing that couldn't have went better for the Denso camp. The joy on Angie's face Friday night after she went low for the round was just phenomenal to see, and just the energy over there in that camp again is infectious. And I'm telling you, I think the reason companies like Denso are super successful and they have events like that and they put is that enthusiasm, it starts high, right? I mean, Lisa Mickler that oversees a lot of those programs, she genuinely loves this stuff. She's covered in rubber at every race. She's down on the starting line. She is a true fan of the sport. She cares about it. She cares about the people that are involved, and the success follows, right? I mean, it's just one of those things that it's an incredible thing to see, and I couldn't be happier for them to have that much success at the Denso US Nationals, right? I mean, that's like the ultimate thing for a drag racer, a team owner, or whatever, to like win your sponsor's race. That's hard to top, man. So Keith, my buddy, asking me about the upcoming shakedown. I'm super excited about the shakedown because for me, the shakedown at the Shakedown Nationals at Virginia Motorsports Park coming up in a week. I'm really excited about that event because in this, I get feathers ruffled with this, but I think I see the future of the PDRA there when I see all those nitrous cars and all those blower and turbo cars and pro charger cars lumped together. I tell you, man, everything goes full circle, right? And oh, hey, Lisa, I didn't know you're watching. I mean it though, and it's a cool thing to see people that, again, why you do it, and the results will follow. If your head's in the right place, if your heart's in the right place, I truly believe results will follow, man. But the Shakedown Nationals at Virginia Motorsports Park, Tommy and Judy Franklin's playground out there in Dinwiddie, Virginia. I think it's gonna be fantastic again because it's the PDRA. It's the best of the PDRA. It's a huge cross section of the PDRA, all lumped together, doing battle on the Outlaw 8th Mile, and I think it's a super exciting deal. We're going to see a lot of. I love the opportunity for the stars of Pro Nitrous to go head to head with the stars of Pro Boost, the PDRA's headlining categories, and I truly believe and feel in my heart that the next step for the PDRA is to join those classes together and run all of them against one another. I think that all of a sudden you go optics, right? I know this. You guys will get tired of me talking about this, but all of a sudden you go from having two classes that look poorly attended or not super well attended to having one class that looks like gangbusters, right? All of a sudden you could be racing for $20,000 a race maybe and having, 20 cars, 30 cars showing up for a 16-car field. It would just, and they're so close together right now performance-wise, it's not like we've got 2/10 between the classes. They're close. And I hope we can get out of our own ways and our own way and make forward progress with that, despite the fact that I think people get wrapped up in, well, one of the cars are going to have to maybe slow down, or we're going to have to put some weight on one or whatever to tighten them up a little bit more and make everybody feel they've got a fair shake at winning. And I just hope we don't let that get, Justin, actually, I hope we don't let that get in the way of putting on a great race, because drag racers, sometimes we get lost in land speed racer world, and we forget that we're not really out here to set records. That's great when it happens, but we're out here to drag race, right? And I've personally experienced this. Drag racing, to me, nitro funny car racing is no more exciting now at 330 miles an hour than it was when the cars were running 312 or 300, right? The performances, that's something that caters to the hardcores. That competition, close competition, the battle, the gladiator nature of drag racing, that's what sells tickets. I mean, you get the thrill show is important, but I mean, it's not just the scoreboards. And I think all of us, sometimes we get locked into like, hey, let's make sure the track is so good that we're definitely going to make our career best run. Who cares? If the conditions present themselves to set your career best or to set a world record, fine. That's fantastic. But let's not get accomplishing that in the way. Let that get in the way of having a hell of a drag race, a massively competitive drag race. So I'm super excited about the Shakedown Nationals. seeing all the radial tire heavyweights come out and do battle against pro mods. Baddest asses, really. I mean, that was for me, the talking point of the whole Shakedown Nationals last year was seeing the stars of big tire pro mod racing going head to head with the stars of radial racing. It's a concept Donald Long and I have been talking about for years. Tyler Crossnow and the gang at VMP pulled it off. And I think it's a cool thing to see. I'm a big fan of my big tire guys. I think race cars are supposed to have big tires and wheelie bars. So sorry to whoever that offends. Because I like big tire race cars. Kyle Lang, what's your take on nitro back to 1320 and make them slower? I think my solutions for nitro racing include a couple of things. And I don't know if this will be a popular sentiment, but my belief on Top Fuel and Funny Car right now is that I think the NHRA almost has to own those cars. I think there's a business to be had there. I think you buy 10 Top Fuel cars, you buy 10 Funny cars, you sell sponsorships to each one of them. You rent the opportunity to drive them or sell sponsorships based on who's going to drive them, and you have a controlled show. You drive down the expense of running those cars because everybody has the same stuff. It's no longer necessary to go out and have your own engine program, right? Because everybody's got the same stuff. If you find something good that's going to help the cars, you give it to everybody, right? It would make, does it take away some of the ingenuity and gumption, whatever that existed in drag? But it's just what it is, right? It has gotten so expensive and so out of the realm of, so far from sustainability, that something significant like that's going to have to happen. I think that the Monster Jam approach could work. I really, truly do. Franchise it. You've got 10 Top Fuel cars, 10 Funny cars. You know exactly who you're going to have at every race. Build all these people into stars. Cars become known for the names on them. Cars become known for the sponsors on them. You never got to wonder, is that guy going to show up to Indy? Who's going to be at Gainesville? You just eliminate that variable. Obviously, there's a tremendous expense that comes with that, but I do think there's a way to turn that into a business that at the bare minimum pays for itself. There are people out there that will pay big money to drive these cars, pay big money to drive these cars and lean on the platform that exists by driving them, by competing in them. And I think that that's one of the things that needs to happen or could potentially happen to get things headed in the right direction. And then secondly, and I know that, extinguishes, and I understand what you're saying, Joe, but I'm just talking about longevity, right? I mean, we're seeing the proof's in the pudding, man. We're headed in the wrong direction with car count in Top Fuel and Funny Car, and something dramatic's going to have to change. The other option is to dramatically reduce the performance, and that's going to be, I'm not the guy, admittedly, I'm not the guy to rough out a plan on how to slow the cars down. I don't know if it's single mag. I don't know if it's less fuel pump. I hate to see all these racers have to incur a tremendous amount of expense testing and figuring these things all out, right? But to go back to Kyle Lang's question, I do believe that drag racing has to happen on a quarter mile. There's no doubt in my mind that if I was running NHRA, I'm doing whatever has to be done to go back to 1,320 feet. And I know there are tracks that maybe it won't work at, but by and large, dude, the thing that frustrates me is this is another thing that it's like, the quarter mile is the universal drag racing barometer, right? I mean, it's Vin Diesel, right? As Dom in Fast and Furious. I live my life a quarter mile at a time for those 10 seconds or less. You know what I mean? Like, that is one of the only things drag racing has that has broken into the mainstream, the quarter mile. You look at Motor Trend, a new car review, whether it's a Mini Cooper or a new Corvette, it says 0 to 60 and it says quarter mile time, right? And we've eliminated the opportunity to lean on that well-known thing, that well-known universal yardstick that belongs to drag racing. And I just think that that's something that we need to get back. Whatever it would take to slow the cars down enough for the drivers and the team owners the stakeholders, I'll call them, to feel good about it has to happen, because it's like, of all the things we're so hesitant, it blows my mind. I've asked this question before, but it's for a group of people who seem completely unwilling to change, by and large, being the NHRA. How is it that we allowed ourselves to believe it was a good idea to go from 1,320 to 1,000 feet? I mean, it's insane. I mean, it literally is. It's such a big part of the sport. The quarter mile. I've had racers tell me that they won't go race XYZ series because it's 8th mile, right? And I'm not necessarily a believer of that. I grew up 8th mile racing. It's more part of my DNA, and I have maybe a unique appreciation for it. I think a lot of people in the South and the Southeast have a unique appreciation for 8th mile drag racing. But I do think that going back to playing to the masses, to getting our sport where it needs to be, to achieving what I think exists for the sport of drag racing, we got to be racing a quarter mile. You can't introduce that confusion, that nuance. You just can't do it. Yeah, you just can't do it. What are your thoughts on separate West Coast and East Coast series with a big race at the end to cut down the schedule needed to run for a championship? Steve, I do think that the quickest way the NHRA could do the most good at the least expense to racers is reduce the number of races. That seems to be a universally accepted thing, that 24 races is too many. Now, granted, you're going to have some really tough phone calls to track operators, and there's going to be some people on the outside looking in, and that's going to suck. No doubt about it. But we are often defined by the difficult decisions that we make and when we make them, right? And I truly believe, I look at the sport, no better example is needed than pro stock. That was a class that was fighting, right? They were struggling, and then they have a whole bunch of rule changes thrown in their face, which was a massively questionable decision to begin with. But you take something that was already hard, you make it harder, you make it more expensive, and they reduced the number of races, and overnight reinvigorated the class. All of a sudden, you have people coming out of retirement. Bo Butner decides not to retire, right? Roger Brogdon shows back up. All these drivers show back up. And I think that is just 18 races is still a lot. I would argue that it might be too many. But I'm with Jason Wolf. I would cycle tracks in every other year, or I would have a lottery like the NBA does with draft picks or whatever. You could turn it into it could be a cool thing, right? That we're going to have a lottery for the 2 tracks that we go to this year that we won't go to next year. The 2 winners are excluded from next year's drawing or whatever. And just to add some excitement or whatever. But I honestly think reducing the number of races is probably the quickest way to massively improve participate. If you're not going to go the route of franchising and take matters into your own hands and control the show, you have to reduce the number of races. Kyle Lang, I say, okay, they're moving too much. I say make it 1320, do whatever power reduction it takes to make it safe. We have enough technology to make it more safe than it has ever been. I agree 100%, man. Kyle, I think that's a fantastic point, and I'm going to throw it up on the show. I think racing quarter mile is just, that's something that we have to achieve. That would be high on my priority list. Do you think setting Top Fuel and Funny Car a 3.8 style index racing? I'm out on index racing. I'm out on anything. I just disagree. What is this? I disagree, Pat says. The noise, smell, feeling, getting nitro in your eyes and lungs during a warm-up are all part of the allure. As a fan, nitro is the best. I'm not sure who said. Oh, okay. There's an argument happening within the comments. So Morgan is saying, I think Top Fuel needs to go. There's no longer a need for those chassis. The thing I will disagree, because I think that by and large, if you close your eye, if you ask the completely untrained race fan, the completely ignorant person or whatever, and ignorance not like a mean thing, like just doesn't know anything about drag racing, and tell them to tell you what a drag car looks like, they're probably going to say, like, isn't it like long and skinny with like a big tires on the back and a wing. Like, I think that's what people think of when they think of drag racing. So I don't know that we totally want to get away from top fuel racing personally. I have argued in the past that there should be one nitro class. I know that's going to break some hearts, but it does to me, much like the PDRA example, it would be super cool to see Leah racing Alexis, racing JR Todd, racing Sean Langdon, racing Jack Beckman, racing Ron Capps, racing Tony Schumacher. Like, to have all those superstars in one competitive pool is really exciting to me. And I do think that if Detroit isn't going to get behind Funny Car or get behind, if you don't have a very valid reason to get behind Funny Car, go all in on Top Fuel, right? Or if you're going to get money from Chevy, Dodge, whatever, go all in on Funny Car. Put them all in Funny Cars. I don't know. I have had thoughts about that, because one of the things that drag racing struggles with is it's just an inherent problem. It's a problem. It's my Garth Brooks thing that I love to do. If you've watched his video documentary, good and bad, blessing and a curse, right? It's two things. All this participation, it's fantastic, but we also have so many winners that it's hard to adequately tell the story of all of them. If you think about the challenge, a news anchor faces talking about who won the drag race this weekend, who won the NASCAR race this weekend? Well, Dale Earnhardt Jr. did. Well, who won the drag U.S. Nationals? Well, Jack Beckman won Nitro Funny Car. Sean Langdon won Top Fuel. Scotty Polachek won Pro Stock Bike. Erica Anders won Pro Stock. Stevie Jackson won Pro Mod. I mean, you need a 5-minute segment to get through it, and no news station has that, right? So Scott Palmer, less track prep, not no prep, immediately slows them down at no expense to teams. That's something that is not a super popular opinion, but he is 100% right. And that's something that there's been people in the media arguing that for years, that we're going the wrong way with track prep. And I would agree with that. I think again, there was an era came about a couple of years ago that was new for drag racing, the age of track prep specialists, right? And I'm not vilifying them, but that was a new thing, right? All of a sudden, you've got guys traveling around the country, traveling around the world, prepping racetracks. And it just got to be more prep, more glue, more rubber, more tire, more equipment, all these things. And it's just, I think we maybe got to a sweet spot, and then we just, to typical drag racing fashion, we just ran past that, right? We ran past whatever that sweet spot was. And for me, tough track conditions are part of drag racing. I remember my growing up, when we were going racing, I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but like my dad would laugh at the guys who wouldn't make changes to their car, who couldn't get down a bad racetrack, right? It's like all those things are adjustable for a reason, right? I think and it is. I'm seeing this, Eric, Pat. I mean, there are guys that make a living running around the country prepping racetracks, and God bless those guys. But I do think that we've just gotten, it's so far gone now, right? That the expectation for track owners, it's tough. I mean, I can't imagine trying to put on a radial race or whatever, because the expectation of the track is so freaking high, right? And it seems like everybody goes to every race, whether it's July or January, expecting to set a world record, expecting to knock the earth out of rotation. And it's tough, man. It's super tough. I think that we've gone too far as track prep. I don't want to see it unsafe. To Scott's point, you can't go no prep. You can't, but maybe a low prep. Maybe there's a happy medium that could be found where the tracks are satisfied, or the team owners and the drivers are satisfied from a safety performance aspect. You're still putting on a hell of a show, but you're reducing the performance of the cars dramatically. I still remember back on our local track, which is spray VHT. Yeah, man. I mean, it's the expectation right now, I would say, is glue guardrail to guardrail, guard wall to guard wall, and 6 to 10 barrels of it, right? And people don't know how expensive traction compound is. And it's another thing where we've just gotten so far out of sorts, unfortunately, and I think that that's something that all of us have to do sometimes, is get back to our roots, or get back to square one, right? Get back to where it all started. And I feel like some of this is the sport just needing to kind of rewind. It's like we ran forward in so many ways, but other things didn't grow with it. They weren't in step, right? The performance of the cars and the cost of the cars are doing this, and like the ROI for being a team owner or a sponsor is kind of doing this. You know what I mean? I'm seeing don't take 20. Okay. Lose the clocks, mile power, and win lights only. ET means little or nothing at this point. I don't know. I think the hardcores, Mike, really like it. I actually tried that because I believe that. At the 2017 Drag Illustrated World Series of Pro Mod, we ran a race with we ran our race without scoreboards, and I thought it was badass. But the super hardcores want to know what the cars are running. They want to know the ET. They want to know the speed. I tried to serve both audiences. We turned the clocks on in the finals, and it was pretty cool. I think that is a cool way to do it or whatever. But the Street Outlaws are proof positive. No prep racing in general is proof positive that what people are there to see is a race, right? Two people doing battle on the 8th mile, on the quarter mile. First one to the finish line wins. And that W, that win light's all that really matters, right? So I don't know. I can see that. I can make an argument either way for that, man. Fans, when they spend their hard-earned money, Eric Carey is saying they want a great experience and performance. I just think that fans, in my opinion, they want a great experience above all else. They want to be welcomed. They want to be as comfortable as they can be. They want to connect with somebody. They want to be thrilled. But I think what drag racing provides with the open pits atmosphere and the fact that you can go hang out in the pit area and talk to drivers and talk to crew guys and stuff like that, drag racing provides fans a unique opportunity to connect with people. And that, it's funny. Like I always use my wife. I think she's the best example. Is that she's not like a hardcore race fan, but she asks. She wants to know how Eric is doing because they're friends. She wants to know how Jason Scruggs is doing because she's always liked Jason, and he was so nice to her when I took her to the Houston ADRL race in 2007. Right? She connected with a handful of people, and now she follows them. Right? And I think that drag racing uniquely provides that opportunity for people because it's hard. You got to connect with with Cam Newton via social media, right? Or LeBron James, like by knowing his story or reading some book about him. In drag racing, you can come out and meet these people, find out who they are, find out what they're about, what they're like, what they sound like, and connect with them in that fashion. Another thing that drag racing does so freaking well, but we're not nearly excited enough about it. We're not nearly proud enough about it. Need to bring new people to the table. How did they do that in the beginning? Was names and individual guys with the past or personality to it. It's so cookie cutter now. That's why Pro Mod is special. I can't argue with that. I think that turning these drivers into stars is priority number one. That is how you bring new people to the sport. You tell these racers stories and you connect them to the masses. You let people get invested in their story. I've said this many times. Drag racing, like big burnouts and header flames and nitro fumes and race fuel and all those things that have been talked about in the comments here, those are the things that brought us to the drag strip, right? Those are the things that may bring us out that first, second, third time or whatever. But what brings us back are the people and that culture and that competition and that air, that unique environment that exists at the drag strip, man. And it's the people make all the difference. They really do. In drag racing, again, to kind of bookend today's live chat, it's like this is such an incredible group of human beings that the sport deserves more. And if it's the last thing I do, we will get that done. Drag racing deserves to be a part of the mainstream sports conversation. It deserves to be part of the mainstream motorsports conversation. But until we all collectively make that decision and start heading that direction, it's not going to happen. And so, anyways, I encourage you all to, shout from the rooftops about what's going on in the sport of drag racing. Despite, economic turmoil, a global pandemic, the U.S. Nationals was absolutely off the hook. That's my take on that. I did see somebody ask about the Jack. I didn't get to see the Jack Beckman double
I
bulb.
didn't know that happened.
I didn't either until dinner. Apparently, Jack Beckman double bulb J.R. Todd in the final. Jack said it wasn't intentional, but apparently J.R. Todd was pretty heated. I love that stuff. I mean, that's the type of stuff that should be on SportsCenter. And because what it does is it shows how much this stuff means to people, right? How bad J.R. Todd wants to win. Bad enough that he's going to freaking come at Jack Beckman, right? I mean, I just think it's an absolutely awesome thing that we can't really do enough of. So with that said, we'll shut this thing down. I appreciate everybody participating. I'm so glad I got to see everybody at the races this past weekend. What else is going on? Hope to see some of you at the Shakedown, Gainesville, NHRA coming up in a couple of weeks at the end of the month. That'll be cool, I think, going to Gainesville to the Gator Nationals this time of year, the end of September, going to be crazy fast, and I'm very, very, very excited about that. Thank you, Tom. Do you think the difficulty of live TV is going to hold back drag racing, or is there a way to get around that with a Street Outlaws type show? Joe, I absolutely think the sport of drag racing needs a reality show, needs a show like Street Outlaws. There are an incredible number of hilarious, personable, charismatic people in the pits of any drag race. Pro level drag racing definitely needs a reality show. Definitely needs it. But I do think there's a way to make our show, make drag racing play a little bit better on television. I do. And I just think a lot of it starts with being live. I don't think television and sporting events, unless they're live, I think that's especially for like an NHRA, live is the thing. If it's going to be live, I get so frustrated with the spoiler alerts and all that stuff that happen on social media relating to drag racing. It's like, that should not be the case, right? Everybody should be watching the drag race live, and it's a tragedy that we haven't accomplished that as a sport after nearly 70 years. But I digress. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. Remember, if you have questions, shoot me an email, wes@dragillustrated.com. Love to hear from you guys. Anything you want to talk about here during our weekly little BS session. I appreciate you all. God bless you. God bless the sport of drag racing. I think we made a big impact this past weekend. I hope everybody's walking around with their chest stuck out a little bit. And yeah, I'll see you at the racetrack.